If you are hearing these words today, it is not by accident. Out of the millions of videos that exist on this platform, your finger stopped here, on this exact message, at this exact moment of your life, and I want you to understand something before we even begin. The day you fully reveal who you are, no one around you will see things the same way again. So before we go any further, take 2 seconds, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, share it with someone who just came to mind right now without even knowing why, and if while listening to these words you feel something light up inside you, write "Thank God" in the comments. Not for me. For you. To mark today, the exact moment you understood that your transformation will not go unnoticed. Because what I am about to tell you now, most people will never understand until they live it themselves. But you, if you are still here, if something kept you from scrolling to the next video, it is because your spirit already knows this moment is approaching. Listen closely. There is a precise moment in the lives of certain people when everything that had been hidden, prepared, shaped in silence for years, suddenly bursts into the open, with such intensity that no one around them can pretend nothing happened. It is not a simple change. It is a revelation. An identity reveal so powerful it shakes not only those who barely knew you, but especially those who thought they knew you perfectly. Understand this deeply. It is not a coincidence that you have been feeling lately an inner transformation you cannot fully put into words yet, but that you feel growing a little more every day. This isn't aimless restlessness. It's a sign your revelation is approaching. Most people never understand this truth. God never prepares a revelation in silence so that it stays quiet once it's finally shown. He prepares a revelation in silence precisely so it can then burst out with an impact no one can ignore. It is not a coincidence if the people around you have started, lately, to look at you differently, to ask you questions they never used to ask, to sense a change in you they still can't quite explain. Understand this. When God prepares someone for years in the shadows, the revelation that follows is never quiet. It shakes people. It disrupts them. It forces people to reconsider everything they thought they knew about you. Look at the story of the man born blind, in the Gospel of John. A man everyone had known since childhood as the beggar sitting by the road, unable to see, dependent on the charity of others just to survive. His condition was so well known, so fixed in everyone's mind, that no one for a second imagined it could ever change. And then one day, Jesus passes by, puts mud on his eyes, and tells him to go wash in the pool of Siloam. This man obeys, washes, and for the first time in his entire life, he sees. Understand this deeply. His transformation was so radical that his own neighbors, people who had lived alongside him for years, could no longer say for certain who he was. Some said, "It's him." Others said, "No, he just looks like him." And he himself had to keep repeating, "It's me, yes, it really is me." Understand this. When your true identity is finally revealed, it is completely normal for some people around you to struggle to recognize you, to accept that this change is real, to believe that the person they see now is truly the same person they thought they knew. This man had to defend his own transformation before the religious authorities, who flatly refused to believe the miracle, even going so far as to interrogate his parents to verify whether he was truly their son. If this resonates with you, listen closely to what comes next. Your transformation is likely to disturb people before it convinces them. Some will look for logical explanations, hidden reasons, simpler versions easier to accept than the miracle itself. But you, like this man, only have one thing to answer. I cannot explain all of this with perfect words, but one thing is certain: I was blind and now I see. Listen closely now, because here is an even more overwhelming story. Look at what happened on the road to Damascus. In the life of Saul, a man known throughout Jerusalem as the most zealous and most feared persecutor of the early Christians. He hunted down the disciples of Jesus with fierce determination, even obtaining official letters authorizing him to arrest and chain anyone belonging to this newly born faith. No one, absolutely no one, could have imagined that this man would one day become one of the greatest defenders of the very faith he sought to destroy. And yet on that road, a light from heaven suddenly surrounds him. He falls to the ground, blinded, and hears a voice, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" Understand this deeply. This encounter literally turned his whole life upside down in a matter of moments. The man who walked into Damascus was no longer the same man who walked out of it. And when he begins preaching, just days later, in the very synagogues where he had been expected to arrest Christians, Scripture reports that everyone who heard him was astonished, and said, "Isn't this the man who persecuted in Jerusalem those who called on this name, and hasn't he come here specifically to take them as prisoners to the chief priests?" Understand this. Your identity reveal can literally leave those who knew you before completely stunned, precisely because it contradicts everything they had come to expect from you. It doesn't matter if some struggle to believe in the change taking place in you. What matters is that this change is real, deep, and irreversible. If this resonates with you, understand this now, because here is a truth most people completely ignore. Sometimes the most shocking revelation isn't that of a stranger who suddenly becomes someone important, but that of someone people thought they already knew fully, who reveals an unsuspected side of themselves. Look at the story of David facing Goliath. Before that battle, David was nothing more, in the eyes of Israel's army, than a young shepherd sent to bring bread to his brothers on the battlefield. No one saw him as a warrior. His own older brother, Eliab, even grows angry with him and openly despises him. "I know your pride and the wickedness of your heart. You came down just to see the battle." And yet, just hours later, this same young man, despised by his own family, brings down the Philistine giant with a single stone from his sling, in front of two entire astonished armies. Understand this deeply. David's revelation didn't just surprise the Philistines. It first and foremost shook his own people, those who thought they already knew everything about him, those who had filed him away as the insignificant youngest son, incapable of anything great. After that victory, Scripture notes that Saul himself asks, "Whose son is this young man?" As if, despite all the years spent watching David play the harp in his palace, he had never truly seen him, never truly recognized what he actually carried within. Listen closely, because here is a truth that may directly touch what you're living today. Look at the story of Peter, on the day of Pentecost, just weeks after denying his master 3 times out of sheer cowardice, terrified of being associated with Jesus in front of a simple servant girl. This man, known for his fear, his instability, his broken promises, suddenly stands before an enormous crowd in Jerusalem, and preaches with such power, such clarity, such overwhelming authority that 3,000 people are converted in a single day. Understand this deeply. Those who knew Peter before, those who had witnessed his denials, his hesitations, his repeated weaknesses, must have literally pinched themselves to believe this was the same man now speaking with such confidence. It is not a coincidence that your own transformation might seem, to some around you, almost impossible to believe. Understand this. It isn't because people struggle to accept your change that it isn't real. It is often the opposite. The deeper the transformation, the more it shakes the certainties of those who already thought they had you fully figured out. Peter didn't try to convince people with long theoretical speeches. He simply let his transformation speak for itself, with a boldness he had never had before, precisely because something far greater than himself had taken hold of his life. Picture the scene that morning in Jerusalem. Residents of the city, pilgrims from distant nations, hear this man they may have seen just weeks earlier, trembling, fleeing, denying any connection to Jesus out of sheer fear. And that same man now stands firm, without trembling, without fleeing, right in the heart of the city that had crucified the one he served. Some in the crowd mocked him, claiming he was drunk. Others, gripped by a conviction they couldn't explain, were cut to the heart and asked what they needed to do to be saved. Understand this deeply. Your revelation will never produce a uniform reaction in everyone who witnesses it. Some will mock, will try to minimize what they see. Others, on the other hand, will be touched at the deepest level, precisely because your newfound boldness will awaken in them a thirst they no longer dared admit to themselves. Understand this now, because here is the most moving example of all. Look once more at the story of Joseph facing his brothers, but focus this time on their exact reaction at the moment of revelation. When Joseph finally speaks these words, "I am Joseph," Scripture notes that his brothers could not answer him, so troubled were they in his presence. They were literally frozen, unable to say a single word, overwhelmed by a mix of shock, fear, and shame in front of this brother they had sold as a slave years earlier, and who now stood before them as the second most powerful man in all of Egypt. Understand this deeply. Your revelation, when it fully comes, could well produce that same effect on certain people around you, those who once looked down on you, underestimated you, sometimes even betrayed you. They might find themselves, like Joseph's brothers, unable to say a single word, so vast will be the gap between the image they had of you and the reality now unfolding. But look at how Joseph handled that moment of collective shock. He didn't let the silence turn into permanent discomfort. He came closer to them, reassured them, explained that everything they had meant for evil, God had turned into good to save many lives. Understand this. When your revelation shocks the people around you, you too will have a choice between feeding their discomfort or turning that moment into an opportunity for grace and restoration. Notice also that Joseph wept openly before his brothers, loudly enough that the Egyptians in the next room could hear him. He did not hide his emotion behind a mask of composure. Understand this. Your own revelation does not require you to remain cold or distant toward those who once wronged you. Tears of genuine emotion can accomplish what 1,000 carefully chosen words never could. Listen closely again, because here is an identity reveal that literally changed the course of an entire nation's history. Look at Moses, returning to Egypt after 40 long years far from everything, exiled in the desert of Midian, forgotten by everyone who had known him in his youth at Pharaoh's palace. To the Egyptians of that new generation, he was nothing more than an unknown old shepherd, a stranger from nowhere in particular. And yet, when he finally stands before Pharaoh, alongside his brother Aaron, and announces, in the name of the God of Israel, "Let my people go," no one in that room could have imagined the scale of what was about to unfold. Understand this deeply. This simple shepherd, unrecognizable to those in power, would become the instrument through which an entire empire would be shaken to its very foundations. His revelation did not just surprise Pharaoh. It shook the collective memory of an entire nation, one that still remembers, to this day, this man no one saw coming. If this resonates with you, understand this: sometimes your revelation won't just shake a few people close to you. It could have an impact that far exceeds anything you can imagine today, touching entire circles of people, even generations, well beyond the small circle that knows you right now. Moses had no idea, as he walked through the palace gates, that his name would echo across millennia, that his story would be told again and again, in every language, on every continent. It is not a coincidence if today, you sometimes feel that what is forming inside you goes far beyond the limits of your current understanding. Understand this now, because we are reaching the peak of this message. Look at what happened on the evening of the resurrection, when Thomas, absent during Jesus' first appearance to the disciples, categorically refuses to believe what he is told. He declares with an almost defiant certainty that unless he sees the nail marks with his own eyes, unless he puts his finger in those marks, he will never believe. A week later, Jesus appears again, speaks directly to Thomas, and invites him to touch his hands and his side. And Thomas, overwhelmed, speaks this stunning confession: "My Lord and my God." Understand this deeply. The most powerful revelation isn't just the one that changes your own life. It's the one that, appearing before the eyes of those who doubted the hardest, turns their disbelief into a resounding confession of truth. Thomas didn't just come to believe. He spoke one of the most profound confessions in all of Scripture, precisely because he had doubted as fiercely as he now believed. Understand this: those who doubt you the most today could well become tomorrow those who testify most powerfully to the reality of your transformation, once they have seen it with their own eyes. Now that we have walked together through these stories, the unrecognizable man born blind, Saul becoming Paul on the road to Damascus, David revealed after Goliath, Moses returning before Pharaoh, Peter transformed at Pentecost, Joseph before his silent brothers, and Thomas confessing his faith, I want to speak to you concretely, because a revelation that doesn't turn into action stays sterile. The first thing I ask of you is not to be surprised if some people struggle to fully recognize you once your transformation becomes visible. Like the man born blind, simply repeat the truth of what God has done in you, without trying to convince people with complicated arguments. The second thing I ask of you is to accept that your transformation may literally stun those who knew you before. Like Saul becoming Paul, never apologize for a genuine change, even if some around you need time to accept it as real. The third thing I ask of you is to never forget that the contempt of your own family or those close to you determines nothing about your true worth. Like David despised by his brother Eliab, your final victory will speak louder than any words that once tried to put you down. The fourth thing I ask of you is to let your transformation speak for itself, without constantly trying to prove that you've changed. Like Peter at Pentecost, your new boldness, your new peace, your new strength will be enough to convince far more than any speech ever could. The fifth thing I ask of you is to prepare your heart to respond with grace to the shock your revelation might cause in some people. Like Joseph facing his silent brothers, choose restoration over revenge, peace over the humiliation of those who once hurt you. The sixth thing I ask of you is to never despise those who still doubt you today. Like Thomas, those who seem most resistant to believing in your transformation could become, once convinced, your most powerful witnesses. The seventh thing I ask of you is to never shrink the scale of what God is preparing through you down to the limits of what you can see today. Like Moses returning before Pharaoh with no idea his name would echo through the centuries, accept that your revelation could have an impact far greater than what you can imagine right now. Understand this now, because we are approaching the conclusion of this message, and I want every word to sink deep into you. What you have felt growing inside you for some time now, this transformation still hard to fully put into words, this sense that something immense is about to burst into the open, is not by accident. It is the sign that your revelation is approaching, and it will not go unnoticed, not by those close to you, and certainly not by those who thought they knew you completely. You did not arrive here by accident. This word did not come into your life by chance. If you have made it this far in this message, it is because something inside you already knows that day is coming, the day people will look at you differently, will ask you questions they never asked before, when some, like Joseph's brothers, will be left speechless in front of what you have become. He has not forgotten your long night of invisibility, just as he did not forget the man born blind before his healing. He has not forgotten your past mistakes, just as he did not forget Saul before his encounter on the road to Damascus. He has not forgotten the contempt you endured, just as he did not forget David despised by his own brother. He has not forgotten your years of exile and being forgotten, just as he did not forget Moses in the desert of Midian. He has not forgotten your falls and your denials, just as he did not forget Peter before Pentecost. And he has certainly not forgotten those who still doubt today, just as he did not forget Thomas, before his confession became one of the most powerful in all of Scripture. The day is coming when your transformation will no longer be a secret you carry alone. It will become visible, tangible, undeniable, even to those who until now refused to believe in your change. And when that day comes, remember never to seek revenge against those who once looked down on you, but let your newfound greatness, like Joseph's, become a source of restoration rather than humiliation for those around you. Don't expect everyone to react the same way either. Some, like Joseph's brothers, will fall silent, stunned by the gap between what they thought they knew about you and the reality now unfolding. Others, like the people of Jerusalem on the day of Pentecost, will be divided between those who mock and those whose hearts are deeply pierced. And some, like Thomas, will simply need to see it with their own eyes before they too can speak a sincere confession. Whatever each person's reaction may be, your responsibility is not to control what others will think. Your only responsibility is to remain faithful to what God has accomplished in you, and to let that faithfulness speak louder than any explanation ever could. If this message has resonated with you, if you feel these words were truly meant for you, then before you close this video, take a moment. Like this video, so that other people, exactly like you today, might come across this message at the exact moment they need to hear that their transformation is approaching. Subscribe if you haven't already, to keep receiving words that strengthen your faith in the most decisive moments of your life. Share this video with someone who just came to mind right now, without even knowing why that name popped into your head, because maybe that person too is about to experience a revelation that will shake everyone around them. And above all, if you are receiving this message with faith, if something inside you just lit up, write "Thank God" in the comments. Not to prove anything to anyone, but to mark before yourself and before heaven, the exact moment you understood that your revelation is approaching, and that it will leave no one unmoved.